Hi guys, thank you so much for joining Introduction to Technical Flats. I am here in our first section, Tools and Windows, and I'm just gonna go ahead and dive in. Your tools and windows make up the actions within your dashboard, just as you've seen in the in-depth guide, PDF guide that you have downloaded from my website. And if you have any windows, so these are your tools over on this left side here. Your windows populate over here on your right side. And if you have any windows that you want to populate on this side that aren't showing, I mean, my dashboard is set up pretty much how I want it. But if I wanted to add something else, I can just come into here and click on whatever it is that I want to add into my dashboard. So if this wasn't already populated into my dashboard, it would actually open as a separate window. And then I can drag it and drop it into this section here. So let's find one that maybe isn't populated. So I'm using two screens, so it actually popped up on my other screen, which isn't showing right now. But you can see it here. This is just an info box, and I can drag and drop it, and you can see that it highlights blue. And then when you drop it, it creates the little icons, and then you can use those to get into what that window is. So it's really great to just be able to drag and drop that into there. The only window that I typically don't see on what is already populated when you first open Illustrator is the type tool or the type window. And I have mine populated here. And so it's really great because you can change how far apart your type is vertically, horizontally. You can change the size, all sorts of different things. So it's a really great tool to just be able to, use type in a more dynamic way, like you would in like in a Word document or something like that, which sometimes Illustrator can be really hard to use when you're using type. A lot of people don't use it for type, especially when you're making technical flats, but I tend to make more guides and stuff like that. So it is a really good tool to have available to me. You're going to see these commands that come up in the next section, and those are your basic copy and paste. I'm sure you already know what those are. I'm not going to take the time to show you those, but I am going to show you the copy and paste function that is a big time saver for me, and I actually have a blog post on that. But I'm just going to make a square here, something super simple. And what you can do is hold down Option as you've selected your object and drag it. And that will actually copy it without copying it onto clipboard. And that is really great because then you can copy something else onto your clipboard, but also copy another object or something. And that way you don't have to go back and copy and paste again. You can also use this tool to repeat spacing. So if I were to drag this down, I'm holding down Option, dragging it down, and then I'm going to hit Command D. And that will repeat this same spacing here over and over and over again for forever until I've gone on to like the next action. So if you click away and go into another action, then you have to do it over again. It's not going to remember to repeat that same spacing that you used before. All right, so let's move into the different tools that you have in your Illustrator document. So the first tool that I want to talk about is the pen tool, and this is what you are going to use all of the time in technical sketches. It is your be-all, end-all. It is the number one thing that you need to learn to master. And it's a little bit different, like if you have been only familiar with drawing things on the computer, maybe in Paint or something like that, something super simple. Which for me, when I first learned how to draw technical flats, that was the only thing that I really had experience with drawing on the computer was, Paint or you know, some like tablet drawing tools, which usually you're using a paintbrush or a paint bucket or something like that. So learning to use the pen tool was definitely like a scary thing for me at first, but I promise you it's not as hard as it seems. So let's select our pen tool, and you can see all of the shortcuts in the PDF document. I might not reference them while I'm talking through these videos, but definitely reference that. I encourage you so much to learn what the shortcuts are, because although it may seem hard at first and it may seem a little daunting and like that it actually takes you more time to remember what the shortcut is, once you train your brain to think of what the shortcut is, it will save you so much time in the long run. That's why I love that copy and paste trick that I just taught you. Instead of having to use Command C, Command V, if you're on a Mac, you can just hold down Option and copy something, and it may seem really simple, but it ends up saving so much time in the long run. I can't even tell you. I mean, I use copy and paste probably more than any command in Illustrator, and it is so great to have something like that that is such like a common command to use and be able to basically cut the time in half that you're using it. And really, in the long run, it has cut my development time in half. It's been a huge time saver for me, and you can learn more about that on my blog. If you want to go like learn more about that command, I have a whole video about how great it is and all the other things. But long story short, I firmly believe that shortcuts are there for a reason, and it is time consuming to learn them up front. I oftentimes have forced myself, if I'm not using a shortcut and I'm trying to learn it, I will delete what I've done and go back and only keep what I have done if I've used shortcuts for everything. And that's how I force myself to learn them. And it sucks at first. It really does. I'm not going to lie to you. It totally sucks. But in the long run, once you've trained your brain to do that, you end up saving so much time. So don't be intimidated by having to go back and, you know, redo things at first. And if things take you a long time at first, like, don't be intimidated by that, because it is so worth it to force yourself to learn the right way to do it. All right, so let's talk about the pen tool. So you can use the pen tool as your drawing tool. So I just clicked, and now I have this path, right? You can see that. And what it's going to do is it's going to draw a straight line for me if I click again. And I've just clicked, and you can go on and on and on and on. Now, if you want to break this chain and get away from it, which you oftentimes do, you maybe only want to make 2 lines, you hold down Command and click. And I have the PC commands as well on the PDF document. I am going to only be referencing Mac on this video, but you can go in there and see what the PC commands if that's what you're using. That's actually what I started out using, so totally get it. It's kind of hard to switch between the two, but that is the way to end your path. So again, you can just click and go to where you want your next point to be, click, go to where you want your next point to be, click, and then when you want to get out of it, hold down Command and just click away. Now, the great thing about the pen tool is once you click and you've started, that's your point, your anchor point. Now your path is where the blue line is. And when you click again, that's another anchor point, and so on and so forth. But the great thing about the pen tool and why it's used most often to draw flats is because when you hold down your mouse, when you click again, you can bend this line wherever you want, any angle you want. And if you want to make a square angle, hold down the Shift button. So I'm holding the Shift button, and these little lines that are coming off with the little circles around them, these guys right here, those are called handles. And I'm going to hold down Command and click away again. I'm going to use my direct select tool, and I can manipulate the handles after I've already drawn something. All right, so I kind of just talked to you about the direct select tool, but let's go into it a little bit deeper. So now we know how to use the pen tool to draw paths, to drop anchor points, and to draw curves. Now we can select any object using our select tool or our direct select tool. So your select tool is going to be probably what you end up using most often, but this is going to be to like grab an entire set of paths or an entire object or a group of things. So I can, move this around on my artboard like this using my select tool. I can't change any of my paths using my select tool. I can, resize things. I can rotate things. That's pretty common. I mean, same thing that you would find like in a Word document or something like that. It's basically just your quintessential, I'm using my mouse tool. Now, your direct select tool, which is the one right below it, the one filled in with white, is great. It can actually grab those points and move them individually. So if you want to move something just a little bit further out, you can also use your arrows. I'm just hitting my arrows back and forth to move it just a little bit, and you can actually change that in your document setup, how far your arrows move things. That's a little bit more complicated. We won't go into that, but just so you know. And like I said just a moment ago, you can use it to change the handles or use it to select the handles of a curve and change the curve. So it's a really, really good tool to master when you're creating technical flats. Now let's move on to the line tool. Typically you won't use the line tool unless you're, I guess it just kind of depends how you draw. I usually don't use it unless I'm, making dividers or something like that. You can use the pen tool to do the same thing. So I'm in my pen tool right now. I just dropped an anchor and I'm just holding down shift and I'm going to drop another anchor. And that is basically what your line tool is going to do. But instead of having to drop an anchor, you can just hold down your mouse and drag. So click, hold down, and drag. And that's your line tool. And you can see how they're a little bit different. So this is like a full object, it's a path, and this is a line. All right, let's clear these things out. And now let's go into our shape tool. So by default, your rectangle is chosen as your shape on the left-hand side, but it will change as you choose other shapes. So in order to go into this additional menu that you're seeing when I do that, any of these tools that have the additional menu have the little arrow right there at the bottom. And all you have to do is click and hold and then drag over, just like you would, in any other program. And there are tons of different shapes that you can use, and these are all great. A lot of graphic designers will actually only use shapes in the shape tool to create their graphics, along with like the Pathfinder tool and stuff, but we won't get into all of that. But a lot of designers actually use the shape tool as their only drawing tool. Now, I don't recommend that for technical flats. Like I said, I recommend the pen tool to be your main tool, but the shape tool can be a great way to make different things like symbols, patterns, all sorts of stuff like that, which we'll get into a little bit later. Do note that you can change. So right now I have the rounded rectangle selected. By hitting the up and down arrows on your keyboard, you can change on this one, for example, you can change the roundness of the rounded rectangle. You can see the outside corners changing as I go up and down, and you can just hold down your up and down arrows to go quickly in between the different sizes. And for other shapes, like the Polygon Tool and the Star Tool, it actually changes, it actually changes the number of points. So you can have tons of points, or you can just go back and just have a star, regular star, or a triangle. And using your up and down arrows is how you change in between those things. So for your rounded rectangle tool, your polygon tool, and your star tool, that is how you are going to change the different factors that are a part of that shape. Just like you probably can imagine with the square tool or any of these other ones, as you hold down shift, so like I'm not holding shift right now, I can make this into an oblong circle, I can make it into, you know, all these different kind of like weird shapes. But if I hold down shift, it's going to make it completely symmetrical, and that applies to all of the shapes as well. All right, so let's look at the cut tool. That's this little scissor guy on the side here. And there are other tools within this. You're really not going to use them except for the scissors tool. And what you're going to want to do is select the path that you want to cut and then just click on it. And you can see that it drops an anchor point. And really what it's doing is it has cut this little piece. And so there's an anchor point actually on either side, if that makes sense. And this is great, you know, if you have your outlined technical flat shape like a t-shirt or something like that, and you need to cut apart that shape and change things. Another way to cut apart your shape is to use your direct select tool. And when you use that direct select tool, you are actually just only selecting one piece of the path. So if I hit the delete button, I just clicked on this little side here and I hit the delete button, it's only going to delete in between those two anchor points. And actually, while I'm talking about it, that's a great point. You can also use the direct select tool to move a path, not just the anchor points. So I can just move this path in between those two anchor points up and down. Do you see? So that's great to keep in mind as well. The hand tool is, you know, something that I used all of the time when I was on PC until I moved over to a Mac and started using a Magic Mouse, which I can, you know, I can go up, down, I can scroll all around my artboard wherever I need to go. If you're on a PC, I'm not sure, honestly, right now. I haven't done the research, but they probably have a mouse now for a PC that you can use. I was on a PC a long time ago when I learned how to use Illustrator. So I would use the hand tool in order to drag around my artboard instead of having to use, you know, just the little scroll bars on the top and bottom, because it ends up taking so much time, especially if you're working with hundreds and hundreds of artboards. It can be so frustrating. And I remember when I actually moved over to using a Mac after using a PC for so long in Illustrator, and I was like, wow, the difference between the two and how much time you save just because a Mac is actually built around using these types of programs, it's insane. Now, if you are a PC user, I am a live, die, buy PC type of person. So I totally get it. Like, die hard PC, love PCs. So if you are using that, the hand tool is going to be one of your best friends. If you're using a Mac, you're probably really not going to use it that much. I don't use it anymore because I have my Magic Mouse, but if you don't have something like that where it's easy to just scroll around to wherever you want to be, the hand tool is a great shortcut to learn to just be able to go where you need to go within your document. The zoom tool, shortcut is Z. You can zoom in, and that's just clicking when you have that tool selected. Holding down Option will make you zoom out as you click. And you can also do other things like click, hold, and drag the mouse to zoom into certain places. You can play around with that and kind of see. I do know people who like click and drag thing. I don't, because I feel like, I don't know, it's just not a shortcut that has stuck with me. But I do know a lot of illustrators who love that function. So, all right. Let's move into the windows. So you have your Pathfinder tool. I have mine right here. Again, if you need to pull up any windows that aren't already on your dashboard, you can go in here. So window Pathfinder, and mine will just pull up here. And there are a bunch of different options that you can use. So let me just show you some, for example. So let's go into, let's just do like a rectangle that's filled with a color with no outline, and maybe one that's like filled with another color. Let's just do, oops. So what you can do with the Pathfinder tool, it has so many different options that you can use, and you can play around with this, but you can essentially, what you're going to do, whatever style you want to go with, you're going to select all of the objects that you want the function to happen to. And let's say for me, I want to divide these. I can click divide. And now all of these different shapes are separated. Instead of having to go in and cut this and cut this and cut this and then rejoin things, you can just quickly and easily divide them, or you can join them together. A lot of graphic designers will use shapes, and then we'll just use this merge tool to merge them together into one shape instead of having to draw a bunch of different paths to make the shape that they want. So that's a really great tool. I encourage you to play around with it. There's so many different options that you can use. I use it mostly when I'm like creating symbols and stuff like that, like really small trims, zippers, hardware, stuff like that. All right, so let's talk about swatches. Swatches are up here. Again, window, swatches, if it's not pulled up for you. And what your swatches are what your object, let's just delete this. And let's just make a new one. And let's just do something simple. So the green is your fill color. So your fill is this green square, or whatever color you choose, the full square. And then what your outline color is this outlined box for anything. So you can see our black is our outline, our green is our fill. And what you can also do is you can choose none. This little line through here means none. And so you don't have to have a fill, and you don't have to have an outline. There's tons of options with your swatches. Your patterns will also populate here. You can see that there's just one in my general. And to look at the different swatches that you have available to you, you can click on this little, they're like little book icons. It's your library. And then you can go into there and look into the different options that you have. Your Artboard tool, mine is deep inside of this window with all these other things in it. But this is your artboard. So if you want to add more artboards, you can use the Artboard tool, or you can use your artboard window. So they both have different functions. So your Artboard tool, you can resize this. You can delete things. If I had another artboard, I could just hit the delete button. As I have it selected, I can move the whole thing around. Your artboard window, you can add new artboards. So I just added another artboard. You can add a bunch. And the new Illustrator, if you have it, they've added some new options. I haven't explored all of them, but they've added some new options to make it a little bit easier to organize your artboards and to line them up and all sorts of different stuff. And so you can see artboard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can name them different things. You can drag and drop them in between each other to change the order of your pages as well without having to move things around. Layers, if you've used Photoshop, any other Adobe product, they work the same way. You have different layers that you can create. For me, for technical flats, what I will do is, let's say this is my technical flat, and I'm just keeping things really simple right now, guys, just to make sure that, you know, I don't want to make it super complicated and you'd be like, wait, what? I'm not quite there yet. I just want to show you the basics of stuff right now. So let's say this is a flat that I have, and I'm going to go in and I want to call out some things on it. So, you know, I'm going to make a line and maybe I say, this is the collar. Obviously it's not, but let's just say it for now. Maybe I don't want this to be on the same layer. So oftentimes in the industry, you will separate your drawing from your callouts. So I would create another layer and I would name it callouts. Then what I can do is I can control click or right click if you're on PC, and I can go to arrange and send to current layer. So if you want to move it to a new layer, be sure that you have the layer you want to send it to selected up here, or this option won't be available. And now you can see the different colors. So this is blue, our sketch is blue. And then our call out is red. So those are the different layers, and you can change the colors by double clicking in here into the options for your layer. Sorry, it's popping up on my other screen, but you can change the colors in here. You can change the name, all sorts of different things. You can also, this is the create new layer button. You can delete layers in here, all sorts of different options. All right, so let's look at stroke. This is another tool or window that you're going to use all the time. So I would say out of everything, I use my pen tool, my swatches, and my stroke the most out of everything. So a stroke is just your, for example, your pen tool, or it can be like a shape is made up of strokes or paths. That is what your stroke is changing. It's changing the path or the path style, the path size, stuff like that. So let's change the fill on this to none. And then go into stroke again. If it's not showing, go up in here, go to stroke, and you can change the weight, the line weight. So smaller, bigger. You can change if the ends are rounded or square. You can change if the corners are rounded or square. You can change it into a dashed line, which is what I use for my stitching. And you can use it for other things too. Like you can see, because the stroke is so thick on this, you can use it for, I mean, that kind of looks like fencing, for example, or you could use it for a zipper just by changing the stroke weight and then the different dash and gap of the line. So you can change all of these options, which is great. And then you can also add like arrowheads onto it. This is huge. Something small like that. You can change the arrowhead. You can change the scale of the arrow to make it bigger or smaller. And you can also change the profile of your strokes. So this is great when you're adding ruffles or details or little kind of like suggestive lines that aren't maybe a seam or something. So if we just take that off a dash, take this, let's just remove that. Let's make it like this. And you can see the different ways. It obviously shows you. But you can see, so this makes it at a point at either end and then it's fat in the middle. So that's really great to play with. A lot of ruffles and stuff are made this way. Or suggestive lines, more like illustrative or stylized sketches are made this way. All right, and then our last piece of the Windows and Tools section is our rulers, guides, and grid. So depending on, I am going to be honest, I don't exactly remember what is defaulted. I'm pretty sure the default is what I have right here. And I don't use my grid so much anymore because I'm pretty good at just determining the scale because I've done it so many times. I don't need my grid in the background. But when you're first starting out, I would definitely suggest using it because it's a great tool. So let's go through how to add these things. So I want to go in and add my rulers. So I'm going to go into View, Rulers, Show Rulers, and you can see the rulers show up here, and this will change depending on what your document setup is. Mine's in inches, obviously. You can do it in centimeters, millimeters, points, pixels, whatever you want to do it in is fine. In order to pull out your guides, you pull them from your rulers. So if you want to use your guides, you have to have your rulers showing. You just click and drag from the top or bottom ruler to create a guide for your drawing. And then your grid is, you can change how it's set up. It is defaulted to be in 1/8 scale. So if you're working in inches, each box from your grid, I'll show the grid here. So you can see your grid and you can make it lighter or darker. I think the default is fine. Each one of these boxes is 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch. So when we go and talk about scale, you'll see what I'm talking about. But that is a good rule of thumb. I only work in inches because that's what makes sense for drawing technical flats, but if you're working in centimeters or something like that, you can figure out what the scale is based on